السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا فيكم يا جماعة الخير. Welcome back to another video that I'm making, and this video is going to be another reaction video, and I am going to be reacting to the highlights of a debate between the Muslim Skeptic, aka Daniel, and David Wood, aka Dovid19. This is the highlights that Daniel put out, and I wanted to respond to it, and so we're going to go ahead and get into the video. But before we do that, make sure you guys like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and please be sure to like the video. Smash and destroy that like button because I need it to help the algorithms, inshallah. So make sure you go ahead and do that. It only takes a couple of seconds and it'll greatly help me, and so I appreciate that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the reaction. All right, Muslim Skeptic.
If somehow Christianity was dominant and you could privilege Christianity through policies that would, basically through force of law, privilege Christian belief, incentivize conversion to Christianity, even punish blasphemy, let's say, but you can strike that if you don't want it. There's still law and order. You're not forcing anyone to convert, but you're just establishing a system where Christianity is privileged. And you said right now that yes, you would want that kind of system because Christianity is the best. So you want a system. You want a system like you're the king, but you would have like a Muslim vice president or vice king, and your administration would have Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims because it's freedom and equality for all, right? According to your system, right?
Let me just give you my view because it might help you understand things.
Just answer the question. Just answer the question. You have these very long answers, David.
There's a huge.
You can just say yes or no. Why can't you say yes or no?
There's a huge misunderstanding here.
So first of all, right off the bat, you can tell that David is struggling. You can tell that in his mind, he's like, oh my God. And you can tell just by this wonderful laugh of Daniel that he's got him like mentally wrapped around. I mean, this is very clear. And by the way, Daniel did a wonderful job, a phenomenal job of explaining the Muslim position. It's logical, it's rational, right? If you believe you possess the best system, you would want to obviously have your like-minded people around you. And for an example, he's talking about a Muslim government, and so therefore you would naturally want to have Muslim people around you in your administration who share the same values and morals and all those other wonderful things. It would be like, a comparison would be like, if we believe America is a democracy, but yet we want to split power between a dictator, a fascist, a communist, a socialist, and essentially have them all ruling at the same time as co-presidents. It just wouldn't make sense, right? It would be chaotic. Nothing would get done. There would be constant debate and constant tension, and nothing would happen. And now we're going to try to see, I think David Wood is going to try to respond to this by, giving another long-winded, dragged-out answer that he usually does, which Daniel rightfully pointed out. So let's continue and see if he's able to make a valid point.
You assume that political power is good in the sense of if your group can get into political power, then you can implement your policies. I view political power as something that will corrupt people once they have it, almost inevitably. So if you take Christians who for 3 centuries it never crossed their minds to get violent, suddenly you give them a bunch of political power and they've been persecuted for centuries now. It's a pretty natural inclination to say, all right, now we have to stop and never be in that situation again. So let's go out and strive for to maintain this sort of political power.
So you think that Christians should never have power? Because power corrupts, so Christians should never strive to have power. You want to live in a world where Christians are always being dominated by other groups?
Not what I'm saying. Not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying
there are two.
And this is exactly what Daniel, the point he's making. I think he's going to go on to explain this, but this is the point, and I think he wonderfully handled this. Either you have power or you don't have power. You can't be in the middle, right? And if you recognize that your system or your ideas are the best and will benefit all of humanity, then you would certainly want to see that excel, and you would want to see that be part of a government, because you know that it is good for humanity in your heart, and it is good for people, and you know that, you're convinced of it. So by David Wood trying to waffle and say, well, you see, power corrupts everybody and everyone is corruptible by power. By the way, this is inevitably this idea of inevitable corruption is not a good answer in the first place, because there are exceptions, as because he doesn't want to say all of them. So another way to think about this is we can find the exception, someone who is a just ruler, someone who is worthy of ruling the people in a fair manner under Islam, and that could be a perfectly working system that we would use, right? And we have examples of this in the past where we've seen Muslim governments and leaders who have, created a system that the Ahl al-Dhimma, or the Christians and Jews and other non-Muslims, have lived under. And not only lived under, but have had their rights. They have their property, their money. Some of them even were parts of certain parts of the government. And they generally lived as a thriving community. And a testimony to that is the communities that we have today in many of the Muslim majority areas, and they still exist today and still have their rights today. So the notion that power corrupts everybody and everything, and so we should stay away from politics, is absurd. And maybe for Christians it might be a bad idea, because Christians themselves, they don't have an example of a Christian government that was just to its own people, yet alone even other non-Muslim people and other different minorities. So maybe that's why David Wood does not understand this. But I want to hear what Daniel has to say as well.
Two choices here, David. Christians are dominant. They have a dominant system that privileges Christianity, or Christians are being dominated. Those are the only two options, logically. Which one do you prefer?
I would not trust a system where Christians dominate and enforce Christianity on other people.
So you want atheists? You want atheists to be dominant?
I don't trust any of them. That's the point. That's the point. That's the point. I don't trust anyone who's going.
So this is funny. Like, I don't trust a system where Christians will be dominant. So isn't that the whole point of the afterlife, where the Christian world would be dominant and that we should want that afterlife? Does that make any sense? So you want me to leave Islam and become a Christian to live in a Christian heaven, in your mind, supposedly? That would obviously be, in line with Christian thought and Christian worldview, obviously, because obviously they always condemn Muslims for believing in a heaven that's very earth-like, meaning you can have sex and there's women and there's drinking of halal wine and all these things, right? And they always like to mock Muslims for that. So obviously the Christian paradise is going to be on Christian values, with whatever that is. But you don't even want to live in that in this life, and so why would I want to live under that in the next life? It doesn't even make any sense. Like, basically you yourself are admitting that you don't trust Christians to rule, and that actually what's even funnier here is that you can know them by their fruits, right? The biblical verse. So there's not a single Christian out there who has true belief, like their faith. We can't see the fruits of their faith. We don't know if they're going to actually even be able to treat people justly, or at least equitably. This is the problem, right? So David Wood is shooting himself in the foot here theologically, which is a problem. Well, we'll continue on.
Going to be implementing these kinds of policies. That's why, if you're going to do anything, the best case scenario would be something that is best for the most people, where the government actually says, okay, there are certain things that we're not going to interfere with. If you guys get violent, then yes, we have to interfere with it. If one group is going to subjugate another group, Daniel, you're free to walk down the street and preach your religion. I'm free to walk down the street.
So this is a problem, by the way. What do you mean, what is good for most people? That is entirely subjective. That is moral subjectivity. We as a society today can decide together that, we think something is good, and that should automatically be something implemented as a law. For example, if the world, or let's say America in general, the majority of people get together and decide, you know what, smoking a joint of weed or something like this every morning is good for people, and we have to implement this in the policy, right? Does that mean now that we have to essentially agree with that? That should be a law because people think that smoking weed is actually good? It wouldn't make any sense. I'll give you another example. For example, let's say if we were to talk about if society itself says, you know what, at a national level, we don't see a problem with incest, and that brothers and sisters can get married. There's no problem here. Mothers and sons, fathers and daughters. We at a national level will say this is fine now. And so that should be the law, and it should be implemented. And if someone disagrees with that, with incest, they should not be allowed to rule the country because they're at odds with the majority of the people. Does that make any sense? I mean, what you're asking for, David Wood, is what we call mob rules. Mob rules is not a good way, an equitable way to deal with a society. There has to be some divine legislation. And you as a theist, David Wood, who's allegedly, he claims to be a theist, a Christian, should and would understand that if he were a true Christian, right? A true believer of anything. God sends his laws just like he did, you believe in the Old Testament. There is laws. There are regulations. There are certain laws that you abrogate, but there are certain laws that maintain. For example, you don't believe that divorce should be there, or abortion, right? Now, if society then believes that abortion is all good and game, and we should now, just abandon that and adopt it because the mob or the majority of the population agrees with that, what is the point of divine intervention? What is the point of divine revelation? What is the point of that? What is the point of having prophets and messengers? What is the point of having the Bible or the Quran? What is the point of having any divine text respective to their religions? I mean, David Wood is shooting himself in the foot. What he's asking for is mob rules and anarchy, because he cannot point to a government that he likes. He doesn't trust anybody. He doesn't want anyone to have power. And he doesn't think that divine legislation should be the authority and should be the benchmark. Rather, he thinks that mob rules should be the benchmark for legislation, which is completely absurd. Let's see what Daniel is going to have to say.
And Pete,
no, you're not.
Preach my religion.
You're not free to preach your religion. This is something else I want to respond to. You're not free to preach the Bible. Go to any European secular country. There are hate speech laws. There in Finland, they just put someone in prison for sharing verses.
Then they would be screwed up. Then that would be messed up. If you're punishing people
It's
for
hate speech.
For hate speech.
Yeah, it's hate speech. No. How is that? The
secular
justification is that these verses are hateful. You can't teach these verses.
Because I don't, but that's the point. I don't want governments to have that kind of authority over people, because inevitably they become corrupt and start crushing people. It's very simple. Don't stop don't stop me from saying what I want to say unless I'm calling for, violence or something like that. You're saying they're doing it too. Great. Then I don't like it when they do it. I don't like it when they do it. I don't like it when Muslims do it. If Christians do it, I wouldn't like it when Christians do it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, so then if you don't want any violence to be preached and again, this is a very tricky subject. It's not only the violent Bible verses. Everything that is diametrically opposed to modern cultural standards. For example, thoughts and ideas on homosexuality and sodomy, thoughts on abortion, thoughts on drunkenness, thoughts on transgenderism, right? All of these things can be deemed as hate speech, as Daniel mentioned. They can be deemed as violent and encouraging of violence or creating animosity and division among people. And that can be then trickled down into hate speech, which then ultimately can lead to its banning. And so that would mean effectively that David would want the entire Old Testament to pretty much be, banned, right? I mean, this is, I mean, it's laughable. So what are you exactly advocating for in the world? If you are advocating for people to come to Christ, but yet you want the word of Christ to be banned according to you, the word of Christ according to you, you're okay with that being banned because it is offensive and it encourages violence in their minds and so forth and so on. What are you doing then? Why are you even preaching or being... I don't understand the purpose of David Wood here. I think Daniel did a phenomenal job in highlighting the fact that David Wood does not appear to be a traditional Christian in this sense. Most Christians are going to be looking at this and saying, what is he talking about? There's no, believing Christian that would agree with David Wood here, right? And I think Daniel Wood is saying, Daniel Wood, I'm sorry about that. Daniel is saying to David Wood that, look, this is what I'm gathering from it. At the end of the day, our differences are differences in religion. We have very, big differences. However, we're both theists, and we both believe in a divine creator, and we both believe in divine laws, right? So why are you taking the position of a complete secularist who doesn't want any religion? It wouldn't make any sense. Your purpose of believing and your purpose of spreading your message that you're doing is pointless. Because you're telling people to live by the Bible or by your religious text and live by that example of Jesus according to you, but yet you don't want them to talk about it. You don't want them to speak about it. You don't want them to mention examples in the past. You don't want them to mention God's wrath, God's anger, God's prohibition. Then what is the point of believing? What David Wood is essentially arguing for is some kind of Platonic universalism, where you just do what you want to do. I can say what I want to say. Doesn't really matter. Whatever. It's all good. In this world, in a worldly Platonic universalism, where we're just going to rule by whatever people together jointly say, and whatever overlaps we're good with, whatever doesn't overlap, then we're going to go ahead and scrap that and just basically ban it in the name of not being oppressive. It's very, very strange, but let's continue.
Christians to be dominated, so that means you
No,
want...
it's not. No, it's not. I would like a government that does not, that doesn't dominate us, right?
So you want a secular liberal government.
You're asking me what kind of government I would prefer. It would not be any sort of government that is oppressing me or telling me I can't preach the gospel or anything like that. I'd be fine with a king if he's a good king. I'd be fine with democracy if it's pretty fairly well-informed people who aren't sending us into insanity and so on. So I'm fine with all.
See, this is the problem. I think Daniel should have asked him here, can you give an example of a government that actually works like this? What he's talking about is theoretical ideas. I wouldn't mind a king. He might have said I wouldn't mind a Khalif who lets me preach my Bible or this and that. But what we're saying is, give us an example of this. Is what you're saying, is it reality? And we can all agree that what you're saying is not reality. Right? It doesn't happen. It's never happened in history. I don't think it'll ever happen in the future. So what you're saying is that you don't want Christians to rule themselves because power inevitably corrupts. So the only alternative is that Christians live under the subjugation of other people. They live under the authority of other people, be them Muslim, Jew, a Hindu, secularist, atheist, communist, socialist, doesn't matter. Insert any ism there. And then you would say that therefore what he's doing is he's shifting the blame. He's criticizing everybody else and not being able to provide a solution. That is not how real critiquing works. If you're going to critique something, you're going to have to bring something which is better. Something that is going to replace the thing that you are criticizing with a better solution. Otherwise, you can come out and say, listen, you know what? I may not agree with this, but we don't have a better system. And that would be a better response. You can say, listen, when I compare Islam and Christianity historically, Christianity fails. But Islam is better. At least this would be honest. He could say, I don't agree with everything in Islam, but the rule of law and the system that Islam has is better than what Christianity has done. And that would be a fair critique, I think, or at least provide an alternative, right? Say, okay, no, this is the better system. But he doesn't do any of that. Rather, he's just whining and crying and not providing any solutions. And nobody likes someone like this. If you walk into a place and you just constantly complain about problems, people are eventually going to get tired and ask you, well, what are you going to do to change it? What do you have as a solution? Fine, we get it. You're upset about certain things. There are certain things wrong here. But what are you going to do? What do you have in turn? Or how do you suggest that we change this, and what do we do? Give us an alternative. And that's what David Wood does not have, which is funny.
I'm fine with a variety of... Daniel,
what is it? Tell me what this government is.
I have no concept of here's the government that I want to impose on the world. And you're saying, David, what kind of government would you impose? I don't want to impose.
How can you criticize?
No.
You can't criticize Islam and Islamic governance and
Of course
Islamic
I can.
law if you don't have an alternative. What is the alternative? What is the?
It's a beautiful point, by the way. Daniel just went right into the point that I was going to make. Beautiful. I mean, this is phenomenal. Actually, this is the haymaker. You don't have an alternative. Bravo alaik, mashallah. I love it.
Alternative. I'm saying that Islam is the best alternative. Islam is the best alternative, and you're saying no, it's not. Okay, so give me your alternative.
I would say
clearly it's not a Christian-dominated alternative. Islam,
Beautiful.
yes, it has discrimination, but it's actually discrimination that is more favorable to Christians, and there is literally not a single alternative. There is literally not a single alternative to Islamic law that David can propose that is better for Christians. And that's why you're floundering, David. You can't give me an example.
Absolutely.
And you even say that, well, my job is not to give you an alternative example. Okay, so you can see that there's literally nothing better that you know of to Islamic law.
If someone leaves Islam and converts to Christianity, and under Islam, you would execute him. You don't see why I would think that's actually worse than,
do you know the history of secularism? Do you know how many Christians were murdered in the French Revolution by the atheists?
So this is a great point, by the way, because what he's trying to do is create a red herring. Daniel never is denying there are certain legal ramifications within the Islamic system. Now, first of all, the notion that every single apostate is killed in an Islamic state is, number one, false. And I think Daniel probably skipped over that because he's addressed this numerous times. This is not the general understanding. There are exceptions, there are rules, and we're not denying that it can happen, and it does happen. It will happen in the future if there's a state. This is not what it is. There are cases where this will happen. However, the point that Daniel is making here, which is very, very important, is that David will be happy to not criticize secularism and kind of embrace it, even though they do the same thing that he's criticizing the Islamic government for, but for different reasons. Because his main contention is that they kill Christians. So shouldn't I not want that because Christians are being killed? So Daniel is telling him very simply that, hey, secularism has killed many more Christians than Muslim governments have. Why are you inclined towards that? Why haven't you come out with the same tenacity against secularism and against democracy, as you mentioned, or kingships? Kingships and democracies have killed Christians if we look in history, by the millions. But yet David Wood is silent on this. And this is a great point that Daniel is making. I don't even think this resonated with David Wood. I don't think he even understood the point that Daniel is making because he's so blockheaded. All he wants to focus on is making Islam look bad that he can't even see the hole in his argument. He likes to talk about holes in the Quran, holes in the narrative. He has a hole literally in his theology right now. People who are Christians are looking at this man and saying, why are you even talking about Christianity? You don't even really believe it. You would rather live under secular liberal laws that dictate to you what you can and can't say about your religion and make you literally embrace ideas that go against your theological position. And you're arguing on that behalf. which is insanity. But let's continue.
Yeah, you don't know what I'm talking
horrible.
about.
Yeah, great. I don't
That's
like
a secular
that.
system. That's a
I don't
secular
like
system.
that either. Listen.
So what's the alternative?
Daniel.
My argument is that this kind of discrimination that you're whining about
Okay,
and
then we
other
agree.
apologists, that's something fundamental. No, it's discrimination. That's something that's inherent to any government system. And the modern secular system discriminates and persecutes Christians much more violently than anything that Islam has done. And the history of secularism has been far more violent in persecuting Christians than anything that has been done in Islam.
We're debating
do you think
Islam
Holocaust deniers? Do you think Holocaust deniers should be banned? I want to see what's your level of free speech absolutism. Do you think Holocaust denial?
No. I think you should expose them. I think you should expose them as stupid.
Okay, so
yeah,
you,
I'm not an absolute. I'm not.
How about a government? How about a government? Okay, policy that says that if you're a Holocaust denier, or let's say you're a member of the KKK, you're a neo-Nazi, you're a racist, you cannot be in certain levels of government. You cannot take public office. You're banned from those positions. Do you agree with that?
I'd have to think about it again.
Look at that. He has to think about that. Beautifully executed by Daniel. Pay attention, lads. Pay attention and see how this was beautifully executed. He puts David on the ropes. Why? Because David Wood should be able to immediately answer and say, listen, we don't want murderous people as representatives of our government. We don't want to have Nazis or murderers or rapists or people who encourage this behavior to be at the highest levels of government because that leads ultimately to oppression and corruption. But David Wood has to think about it. This is a Christian, guys, a Christian who claimed moral authority to Muslims and other people. And he yet cannot determine whether we should have murderous dictators or fascists in the halls of power. Imagine that, ladies and gentlemen. Beautifully executed, Daniel, mashallah. I love it. The rationale is spot on. Let's continue.
Daniel, I'm not.
So neo-Nazis are okay to take official positions in the government, according to you?
No, I mean, what sort of
I just want to see which belief.
Like, what do you mean? No, which kind of what? What is there to think about? I mean, is he trying to rationalize this? Would you say it's okay to have a neo-Nazi senator, but not a neo-Nazi judge, or neo-Nazi, a vice president, but not a Nazi, not a neo-Nazi president? Like, what is he rationalizing in his mind here? I'm like, you can see that he's dense, bro. Like, there's nothing. He cannot think about this. He can't compute this. It's hilarious.
Which beliefs do you want to discriminate against? Because you say that you're open to all beliefs. There shouldn't be any policies against any belief. What about neo-Nazi beliefs? What about KKK? So in your ideal government,
Daniel, this is such a simple topic. This happens. Don't interrupt me, David. In so many debates.
Do not interrupt me, David. Let me finish my thought.
First, I ain't your dimmy here.
Maybe soon.
Everything you're saying.
Maybe
is a
soon, David.
Don't
speak too soon. It's not the end of the debate over.
Yeah. By the way, we love dhimmis, and so David will be under. By the way, David, if you are a dhimmi, you would actually be protected. You wouldn't have to be worried about claiming about things on your life, because Ahlul Dhimma is a protected class of people, meaning your blood, your wealth, your property, your life. These things are protected if you are from Ahlul Dhimma. So actually, Daniel is encouraging something and wishing something good for you. He's saying, inshallah, you will be a dhimmi, and this is good, because that means you will live under a law that you generally agree with. Things like not having, drunkenness, not having wild abortions, not having this whole LGBTQ mess, not having the pushing of atheism on your children. These are things that you would embrace, and you would still be able to be a Christian. You would be able to do business. Well, I don't know about your business, because your business is just basically lying about Islam. But I'm sure we could find you something else as a substitute. But however, you would generally have a protected life as Ahlul Dhimma. or being from Ahlul Dhimma. So yes, this is a very good point that Daniel makes, and although he is laughing and joking with him, I genuinely believe that Daniel believes that, and I think it would be genuinely good for David Wood.
We don't know if you're going to be my dhimmi or not. Answer the question. Are you fine or are you not fine with having neo-Nazis, KKK members, people with these kinds of beliefs, outright racism? They're not violent. They just espouse this kind of white supremacy. Are you fine with them being in positions of government, public policy, and being able to like preach their views about white supremacy?
I think you have some people who aren't terribly far off some of that, and especially in Europe, you're getting people who aren't very far off from that.
You approve of that? Do you approve of that or not?
No, you're oversimplifying it. If you wanted to,
but you notice that David doesn't answer Daniel. Saying that there are people that are there is not saying that whether you agree or disagree with it. It's simply evading the question. Why is it so difficult for him to say, I don't believe people that espouse, neo-Nazi, white nationalist, white supremacist views should be in government? Why is that difficult for him to say? Instead of saying, well, there are people who are borderline, and we don't need your historical analysis of this. We have eyes and ears. We can see and hear these things for ourselves. We don't need you to point out the obvious, David Wood. What we're asking you is, what's not obvious to us is, what do you believe? Do you believe that they should be in power, they should not be removed, or do you believe that this is wrong? This is what we're trying to find out. And you, as a Christian who's claiming moral authority, should be able to tell us this. But again, you fail.
Listen, if you wanted to rule people out, you'd have to describe the policies that would be used and show how they would be implemented in order to ensure that certain people with certain views are excluded. And if those policies...
Do you think they should be excluded? That's the question.
If those policies...
You're just rambling. You're
avoiding
the question.
I'd have to see the
You have to see the policy. The policy is neo-Nazis and white supremacists cannot take public positions in government.
So
they cannot be public school teachers.
The government only says that. The government only says that, right?
Yeah.
Just no neo-Nazis, right? No neo-Nazis.
Yeah, neo-Nazis.
This is such an irrelevant answer. I mean, what is he saying? It doesn't even have to be the whole government. It could be simply a government policy. Just like we should say, hey, we should not have rapists as government officials, right? We shouldn't have people who are serial rapists or what do you call it, pedophiles as convicted pedophiles as government authorities, right? It would be very simple. It doesn't have to be the entire government. It's a condition of rule. So, for example, in this example, a person who espouses white supremacy should not be in government. What do you have to further analyze? It's a simple policy or rule or condition. It's pretty self-explanatory. A person who wants to, who believes that a white race is greater than the other and that they should have the ultimate power and others should be subjugated, they shouldn't be in power. They shouldn't be able to have power in the country. I don't know what else you have to further analyze. I think Daniel has made this has made it as simple as he can for you, but yet you're having difficulty responding to this.
Nazis, no KKK.
I think it would have to be more general. It would have to be if you hold views in the government calling for the racial superiority of one group or something like that, then again, I don't know how you do this. You'd have to. It's not something you just decide and say this group is magically banned. And again, totally, completely, utterly irrelevant.
Yes, it is relevant.
I don't know why
it is
you're
relevant.
From the topic.
So,
does Islam
neo-Nazis
require
no.
persecution of Christians?
Don't try to.
David,
try to weasel
let me
out
give
of
you
it.
5,000 hypothetical scenarios about a government and how to rule out neo-Naz. Does Islam require the
5,000 hypotheticals. Daniel literally asked him one question, and we had to listen to minutes of rambling and incoherence. Literally. I mean, he couldn't answer. He couldn't even give his own position yet. He's talking, as far as hypotheticals, didn't he bring up some hypothetical? If I did this and I did that. I mean, this is pointless. It's a very, very simple question. Do you think that people who espouse white supremacy should be in the government. I don't know why it has to be made more general. You can say, yes, I agree, and everybody else who espouses racial superiority, I mean, you can explain the answer, but I think it should be very clear, right? You can say, yes, I believe that they should not be allowed to, and other people also like them who espouse racial superiority of another race should not be allowed to. But yet he needs to see the paperwork, he needs to see this, he needs to see that. I wonder if he does all this diligent research on the Bible, meaning about the authenticity of the Bible. I wonder if he extends the same amount of criticism and analysis to the alleged word of God they believe in, that he's attempting to try to defend, even though he can't even defend it and not even agree with it right now. So this is, this is laughable. I think David continues to shoot himself in the foot, and now he's trying to play the aggressor. Right, he's trying to show Daniel, oh, look, he's making an attack. You're bringing all these points that are irrelevant. Oh, 5,000 points. And, this is the problem. Instead of addressing the question, you're evading and turning it back on Daniel, trying to play the victim as if he's diverting. But he literally just asked you one question. And after 5 to 10 minutes of rambling, trying to answer, then realizing you couldn't answer, you then turn it around to say, well, this is not relevant. Great job, David. Great job.
The violent persecution of Christians. Following this,
you're the one who talked about blasphemy. This is blasphemy. According to secularism, it is blasphemy.
Because the Quran talks
it is
about
blasphemy.
Yeah,
it is blasphemy. That's the topic of the
Daniel,
debate.
Dan, you can't.
Look, you're interrupting me. Don't interrupt. Let me point out the inconsistency so you can understand it, and the audience can understand it. You started out by saying that you wouldn't want to ban any kind of people based on their beliefs. So presumably you're okay with Muslims, with Hindus, with Satan worshippers even, in government. You want everyone to have a fair, equal shot at being in government. Then I asked you about KKK and neo-Nazis and white supremacists, and you said, no, we should have limits on those kinds of beliefs. So that means you have more of an allegiance to secular liberal ideas about blasphemy and what is out of bounds than you do of Christianity itself, than Christian norms and Christian values itself. That's the contradiction in your perspective.
Right now, Christians have enough. I mean, there are 2 billion Christians. We make up a third of the world's population, and we have some of the most powerful countries that the world has ever seen. I don't see a lot of Christians saying, "Hey, we need to go around."
Christians are non-power today. Liberal atheists.
So wait a minute. David Wood thinks that places like France and Germany and America and Canada are being ruled by Christians? What kind of Christianity is this? A country where the LGBTQ agenda is rampant, drug use, promiscuity. I mean, every single sin that you could find in the Bible is rampant, and these are Christian-controlled nations? So Christians are encouraging this behavior then? This is what Christianity is offering as a solution to Islam? I'm sorry, Daniel already won this debate then. I mean, by your own admission, David Wood, you're admitting, and by your assumption that these are Christian lands and influenced by Christianity. You just mentioned that we're doing just fine. We've created the most powerful governments and blah, 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 as if it's a result of Christianity. So you're asserting that this is the Christian world view, because you're obviously quoting their excellence or excelling as countries as you're attributing that to Christianity and Christian values. So then we would also then have to assume that all the degeneracy that we see is also from Christian values because they're in power, right? This is what you're saying. So Islam then is morally superior to a Christian government because it enforces values that even you biblically would believe in. So Daniel already won this. There is no alternative for you. Islam is literally the only alternative for you because Christianity has failed biblically. Thank you.
Are in power, not Christians. Christians are being jailed for citing the Bible. Christians are being called domestic terrorists when they go to their local schools and they demand that their children aren't taught Satanism. That's the reality of Christians. I'm surprised that you're trying to defend modern liberal secularism. It's shocking to me.
Muslims aren't in
Shocking.
power. You guys are still talking about going around and subjugating the world.
I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that.
I know.
We're
And
honest. That's the honesty. That's the
That's
honesty
what
of
I'm saying.
Islam.
You say you're honest about it because it's actually part of your religion. So it's not really a choice.
It's part
in
of your religion too.
It's not built into my religion, dude.
Yes.
It
is. Do you have a moral objection? Sometimes God just wants believers to engage in expansionist war. You conceded that in our previous debate.
There you misrepresented what I said too.
Sometimes, okay, this is the statement.
Not what I
Sometimes God just wants believers to engage in expansionist war. Sometimes in human history, maybe not now, but at certain points in history, God has wanted believers to engage in expansionist war. That's true, right? Jesus wanted that at some point. Yeah, as testified to in the Bible, yes or no?
See the frustration on David's face, and the reason what Daniel's alluding to, and I didn't watch the debate, but I'm kind of familiar with biblical literature. So what he's alluding to is the idea that obviously Christians believe like David believed that Jesus is always God. So Jesus is the God of the Old Testament. So when God ordered the Israelites to go out and conquer lands and subjugate people and kill animals and take the virgins, and that was all ordered by God to do. It was a commandment. So what Daniel is saying that at some point in history, God believed or wanted human beings or his followers to go and do this. And David is now having a tough time trying to rectify this because he said that it is not part of my religious framework. However, if he is a believer in the Old Testament, and like I say, we believe in the God of the Old Testament, then it is certainly part of the God. It was certainly the prerogative of the God of the Old Testament's of the Old Testament to instruct his people to do that, right? I mean, this is what we see all throughout the Old Testament. So Daniel is, putting the pressure on him, even though, and I think that's a fair point. But David Wood is trying to say that Daniel misrepresented him, and now we're going to wait for a response. But I don't think that David Wood can really make a good case for this. You would have to concede that in the Old Testament, God ordered people to go and conquer. Not because they were fought, not because they were oppressed or anything. No, simply because God wanted to give them a holy land, and he chose them as a people and instructed them to do that. Or in other cases, God was angry at a group of people and wanted to punish them at the hands of the believers and then take their women from them. And this is what God wanted to do as a punishment to those people. So God sometimes in the Old Testament will use conquest and war as a punishment for the people that have gained his anger. And this is what Daniel is pointing out. And it seems that David Wood is theologically struggling with this in this moment. He starts looking left and right. I guess maybe he's looking for help, but it's not coming.
No, concede it.
I thought I made this entirely clear.
Say it, David. Save it.
No, because it's misrepresented. You're misrepresenting everything I'm saying.
The
right
Bible.
Now.
Sometimes God wants believers to engage in expansionist war. That's what the Bible says.
You mean sometimes now? No. So listen.
Not now. I didn't say now.
Okay.
Sometimes in the past.
Let me explain. Because I thought this.
Here we go again.
Because I thought this was totally clear, even though it's completely irrelevant to.
You could tell that Daniel, mashallah, has this nur that is like radiating. Because like, look, man, we've already been down this, and if you want to go down this again, we're gonna own you on this. Like, and he knows he's got this in a bag, and now we're gonna watch David Wood probably waffle around for another 15 minutes, like he normally does, and never get to the point.
This debate. In Christianity, we've been commanded to love everyone, to honor all people. That's what we've been commanded.
You honor them by subjugating them.
You would point out, no, that's what we're told. We're not honoring them by subjugating. Now you're doing what you did with the definition of persecution. Well, it's still just
you love them by killing them. You love them by killing them. No, look, that's what Augustine argued.
We are not in a position to say that sort of thing. If we're told to,
what an idiot. I mean, Daniel is not saying it. It's your individual position. What he's saying is that the God of the Old Testament is telling you this. So it's not your position. It's God's position. And if you love God, and this is how God tells you to love people. how to treat them, right? So, and this is just according to God. And so if it's just for God, it is just for you because you are his subject. This is how it works.
Christine said it.
If we are told to live in,
You can go through all the contextual points that you want. No problem. I have no problem with this contextualization. I call it the magic of reinterpretation, actually. You engage a lot of that, David.
Beautiful.
So no problem. Do that all day. But the point is that there is no moral objection that you have to expansionist war, to dhimmitude, to jizya, to punishing blasphemers, to killing heretics. You have no problem. You have no moral objection in and of itself to those things. No, you can't, because Jesus commanded those things in the Bible. Christianity, whenever Christians have had power in their history, regardless of what David
Nothing
and
to do with the debate.
his magic of reinterpretation, they have violently persecuted and subjugated. They have killed the most people in the past 200 years.
This is 100% valid point, and I'm glad that Daniel came back to this point because this is the truth. And you can tell, look at David Wood. He's upset. He's rolling his eyes. He's frustrated because he doesn't have a response. And this goes back to knowing them by the fruits of their labor, right? And this is exactly what we see. Every time Christianity has been in power, it's been nothing but death and destruction, pillage, rape, carnage. You mention any vile thing that happened, it happened under Christendom. And this is something that David cannot escape. And Daniel rightfully points it out. It doesn't matter what David Wood believes about this. It matters what history tells us.
As a religious group, by far, is Christians. So this does have something to do with the debate, because given that reality, yeah, Muslims are going to have certain policies that will try to limit the control of Christians in the Islamic lands, because they don't want to be massacred like these Christians have been doing for the entirety of their history.
Brilliant
As
point.
we claim that Jesus is the Son of God, we have to be silenced by enforcing dhimmitude on us. And the pattern is we can either convert, we can relinquish our rights to at least publicly proclaim the gospel, or we can be killed. So that's
So this is not a right to claim. No one's limiting your right to claim that Jesus is the Son of God. You can claim to believe it all you want to. What Daniel is saying is very clearly that in the Islamic State, we want to preserve the integrity of the state and the society, and we don't want a repeat of people like you coming to power and then brutally killing everybody around with no mercy and no even concept of dhimmitude. In Islam, Ahl al-Dhimma are a protected class of people who have rights, rights to property, wealth, life, and worship, and even their own law in their court systems. There's no such concept in Christianity. Why? Because it doesn't even want to allow them to live. As we saw in the Old Testament, God wants you to decimate them. And you don't have that concept because you don't even want to allow them to live among you. And yet you claim to be someone who wants to live in this secular type world where everyone can get together and be in kumbaya as long as everybody's allowed to do what they want to do. It doesn't exist in Christianity, David. And there's not a single example of any of this. You can't prove it. And I think Daniel highlighted that wonderfully.
obviously the violent persecution of Christians. If it's, hey, we have to violently subjugate these people to keep them from saying Jesus is Lord.
Islam does not subjugate Christians for teaching their religion. Ahlul Kitab, Ahlul Dhimma, the protected people within the Islamic State are allowed to teach their religion in their churches and their synagogues. They are allowed to raise their children as Christians, as God-fearing Christians. Islam does not prevent Christians within an Islamic nation to teach the Trinity or to teach any of those kinds of beliefs. So this is a misrepresentation from David. If you go to Muslim societies today, you will find Christians that are teaching the Bible, they're teaching the Trinity, and in many of these Muslim societies, the Christians are actually doing very well socially. In Egypt, the richest Egyptian family is actually a construction company family who are Christian, Coptic Christians. Throughout this debate, David has not answered a single question that I had. Literally, very basic questions that even the Christian audience who are watching this are probably ripping their hair out asking, why isn't David able to, for example, say if he does or does not want neo-Nazis serving in government positions, or should those kinds of views be deterred or prevented? Like such a simple question, he did not answer that. He didn't answer the question, name me one system that doesn't discriminate against religious minorities. Name me one.
Daniel has no moral objection to alcohol because God allows it sometimes. So do you have a moral objection to abortion when God has allowed it before?
So if Daniel actually wanted to know if I were making rules, and this will get me in trouble with a lot of people. If I were actually making rules and I were king of the world, I would outlaw abortion. I would not trust a system where Christians dominate and enforce Christianity. Christians dominate and enforce Christianity. Christians dominate and enforce Christianity. Christians dominate.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel did a wonderful job, and you can see at the very end there that David Wood contradicts himself. He's just too cowardly to admit that that Christian worldview is more in line with Islam, and Muslims are the one holding the fort. Like, we're holding down the fort, where we are not allowing and agreeing with these things in the name of secularism or likability. Right, you can tell by the way David Wood responded to that, saying, "Oh, I'm going to get in trouble for this one," as if it really matters. Basically, he's fearing people more than he fears his creator, which is a problem in itself. But nonetheless, I think that Daniel did a phenomenal job. Please make sure to go ahead and follow the Muslim Skeptic. I'm also going to put the link for this highlight from his channel down in the link below. So if you just want to watch it, I did the whole video, but I just want you to go and just give that video a like and a share as well too, because Daniel's doing wonderful work. But I think that Daniel did a phenomenal job. I think we see the problem in David Wood's thinking and his argumentation. He's not arguing as a Christian. He actually puts aside his Christian views. He's throwing them under the bus just to try to attack Islam. And this is a common thought, a common theme among them, where they will simply throw their own religious views and values under the bus in order to attack Islam. And the reality is, what it all boils down to is that the best system for Christians to live under would be under the system of Islam. And Daniel Wood has failed over and over again to provide an alternative. He cannot provide a better alternative to Islam. And I think, alhamdulillah, Daniel was able to highlight that and pin him on that, and even to the point where he asked him questions after questions after questions about his views, and he never got a single response. And this is problematic, right? David Wood could not answer a simple question like, should white supremacists have the right to be in power and be in the government, and should we allow them to be there, right? Or should we ban this? And he couldn't even answer that question, that basic moral question. And this also this kind of falls in line with the general disagreements that we have with Christianity, along with the major ones. When you ask a Muslim something about his religion, in terms of God and what to believe in and what positions we hold, generally Muslims are very clear and precise about what we believe in. There's no ambiguity about it. But when it comes to Christianity, it's always ambiguous. They cannot even define, they don't know whether the Bible is authentic, what copies of the Bible, how many Bibles, who wrote it, when they wrote it, when it was complete, who is God, is Jesus God, is he less than God, is he part of God, is he the Father, is he just the Son, does he have knowledge, does he not have knowledge? You don't know any of these things. Was Paul a disciple, was he not a disciple? What did he really meet Jesus? Was the dream real? Was it not? Did he invent it? Did he lie? Did he break the law? Did he uphold the law? So many problems. There's always this ambiguity in Christianity, and this carries on into his worldview. And this is why David cannot answer basic questions. His theology has poisoned his mind so much so to the point that he can no longer have clarity. He cannot answer basic questions, and I think Daniel did an excellent job of highlighting that. This is all I have for this video, so please make sure to like the video if you did like it. and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And also, make sure to share the video if you liked it. Inshallah, I'll be doing some other, some more reactions, and hopefully this format will be a lot easier for me to get right into it. But I hope you guys enjoyed it in any case. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.